Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet. My name is Katana Malinowski, and I am the host of Transformational Art with Katana, making the unmanageable manageable. Welcome. I am here today with my friend, Sara McDermott, author, screenwriter coach, and producer of the horror thriller genre. Welcome today, Sara.
Thank you so much, Katana, for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yes. And so today, what we're going to do is we're going to get to know more about you and what you do. And of course, this is about all things transformational. So, all the ways that you can connect those dots with what you do would be wonderful. And the first question that I'm going to start off with is really getting to know you. So, who is Sara McDermott as a person?
Oh my goodness. I mean, there's so many different, I guess, aspects that go into any person. For me, I guess first professionally, and then I guess more personally, writing is really at the core of everything that I'm most passionate about in terms of my career. So it's so important to me on such a variety of levels, not just on like the career make a living side, but just in terms of which I'm sure we're going to talk about more, the empowerment side, the personal growth side that can come from writing. So that's a huge part of who I am. Helping students and encouraging other people to tell their stories or get their films made is also a huge part of who I am. So I think I'm a very nurturing person. So I genuinely do believe in the dreams of other people. I myself have big dreams.
Yeah.
And I think because I'm a person with big dreams, I believe in the big dreams that other people have too. So, sky's the limit. So I think that's also a big part of my personality, particularly when I'm teaching and trying to encourage people to get their stories out. And then let's see, personally, I'm a mom. So I'm a single mom to a 7-year-old boy who is just the light of my life. He's wonderful. He's a lot of energy. Not always easy, but he's a very just unique person in his own right, even at the age of 7, very insightful. And I just love him to pieces. So my favorite thing, just getting to spend time with him and see how his mind works and how he's growing and developing. And I also have a fantastic supportive family, fantastic supportive boyfriend. I cherish all the relationships in my life very much. So very fortunate and to have these people be a part of my journey.
That's absolutely beautiful. And support is so important.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that we need in order to be able to, do what we do,
Mm-hmm.
help other people, and not, and transform ourselves at the same time. It That's something that I've really learned a lot about over this past year, is that I used to do a lot of things on my own and believe that that was where strength came from. And
Yes.
I've learned that the strength actually is in asking for support.
Yes. Yeah. I think this is something I'm still continually learning. And this past year, because I've had so much going on, I really have to ask people for help, or else there's no way to do it. And it's something that is sometimes very challenging to me because I like to do it all myself. Like I really relate to that, to you saying that, like, I like to do it all myself. And I guess I do feel like, oh, that's real strength or real success if I can just go do it all by myself. But the reality is, yeah, you need that support. And it's so much better when you have the support, not just the sharing it with the other people, but the way it can spread out.
Yeah.
You can do more, the message can move out more when you accept that help in your life.
Yes. And
Mhm.
it sets such a good tone and example for those around us. And, especially our children and grandchildren, because you have a little one and I have grandchildren about that same age.
Mhm.
And I think about the legacy that we leave them.
Mhm.
So that's a wonderful aspect of that. Well, my next question is, what is it that makes you happy?
Oh my goodness. Well, of course, the people in my life that I've mentioned make me happy, and my child just makes me so happy when he and I get to spend quality time together and have adventures together, and all that makes me so happy. In terms of, other things not involving people, but just things that bring me joy, it really is the writing. And I was actually having a conversation with a friend about this just today, about how I really feel like pretty much anything in life that happens. So even if something on the surface negative happens or something difficult to deal with, if I'm able to put it into a story, it always flips it around. It always turns it into something empowering if I can turn it into a message, no matter what's happened. And that just always brings me such a feeling of like fulfillment and happiness. So I get so much joy out of writing, out of my stories, out of ideas, just like being in receipt of ideas. That just brings me so much happiness.
Wow, that's fantastic. Yeah, it is. That you were talking about adventure with your son.
Yes. Yeah.
And I remember back to when I would do that with my children, and we'd have little adventures that we would create and go on. And that relationship to storytelling, good or bad. And, I know you just had a book release, correct?
I did. Yeah. So just about 2 weeks ago. So I have a copy here with me. So the book is Wolves at Night. It did release about 2 weeks ago. And then last week it actually hit Amazon bestseller lists in Canada and the US. So that was like a huge thrill. It's been very, very exciting. So yeah, it's every single day I'm just trying to like get the word out more and more.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you.
And I know, yes, I have a book that's coming out soon myself. And I'm looking, I'm already so excited. I can only imagine what that next level brings.
It is. I feel like I've been telling people, I feel like my adrenaline has been at such a high since it came out, that I definitely right now, like this weekend, I'm looking forward to like crashing a little bit, because it is like a certain amount of like mental exhaustion of just having been so excited and thinking about it so much. But it is just a wonderful feeling. I think it's wonderful when you work on something for so long to finally have it like done and out. And this one got delayed like several times. So there were definitely times where it felt like, oh, like when is this, when is it actually going to be out to the world? Now that it is, I'm very relieved, very grateful, and really enjoying every minute of it.
That's so fantastic. Well, on the converse of the question I just asked you, what are the things that make you sad or angry?
I think any people being negative when it's really not at all necessary to be negative, which unfortunately, happens a lot probably. But yeah, I'm not a negative person. So I definitely am an optimistic person. So I would say negativity, of course, just bad treatment. We're seeing a lot in the news right now with Ukraine and everything else, and just the treatment of innocent people that is terrible, of course, is very, very sad. I think that another thing that I guess jumps out to me is in particular with children. And I think since having my son and getting to like really witness firsthand, you kind of get to experience over again with your kids, like what it's like to be a child and be just open to those experiences, and really seeing like with him, just how open he is and how much everything really does impact him, like how vulnerable they actually are. So of course, any like poor treatment of children upsets me greatly. And, abuse in really any form. So like in this book that's just released, Wolves at Night, deals with the psychology of abusive relationships. So both the mental aspect and the physical aspect. It is a book that contains, a bit of violence. But in addition to that, one thing that I really tried to explore with it was actually like the mindset, like how do you get sucked into a relationship like that to begin with? Because a lot of times people don't even realize it's happened. So it kind of became important to me to like use story, but try to really inform people, like, how does that happen? And what would you maybe not even think about or look for, but it's something to pay attention to. So yeah, I mean, I think any kind of abusive relationship, even on that mental level, and what that can do to people is also upsets me greatly. And for me, it really is like a personal cause of mine that I want to try to make that better however I can.
Right. And I know that we've had this conversation before in
Mhm.
terms of abusive relationships, and we both have a common
Mhm.
thread there.
Mhm.
And I like to help people. And I know that that's what you're doing as well
Mhm.
through that writing aspect. So that's one of the pieces of the modality that I use. So I have the arts, and
Mhm.
oftentimes people don't really think about writing as one of the arts, but it is.
Mhm.
And so I combine the writing with artwork, visual artwork,
Mhm.
and in a lot of ways you do as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Like I mentioned, I think the power of story just to help with transformation is really, really important. And in my case, I particularly use like the thriller and horror genres, which for most people, the first reaction might be like, what? Like for like horror and personal growth, like it doesn't seem like those two things would go together. And granted, there's different kinds of horror. So like out of all the genres, horror probably has more subgenres than anything else. So yeah, there's certain genres that are maybe more concerned with just being like really disgusting or or exploitative. But on the other hand, like these stories, so I feel like these scary stories, they're very primal. And if you like go back kind of in our history of human beings, the stories that have really endured over the millennia, like are stories that have these elements of horror in them. And I think it's because it can tap into something primal. And for me, I'm really fascinated with the idea of using these stories as a parallel to kind of our lives and the fears we have to face and overcome. So, with horror in general, and even with, just a regular average like horror movie, they tend to be layered with a lot of symbolism about like whatever the monster is, or whatever the scary thing is, usually representing something in the character's life that has to be faced and overcome.
Yes.
And I love that idea. So like what I try to do is walk people through that process of kind of recognizing like, what are your monsters? So what is your story? So whether they choose to use it creatively to actually write a story, or invent a new kind of monster, invent a new kind of scary something that could be a screenplay or a book, or whether it's just like a personal growth, something personal to them. It really is like a story format that works in terms of, let me break down what's holding me back. So like, what is the fear and how do I overcome it? Because in all those kind of stories, you see characters, they either overcome it and they can go on to do like these better things. But in other movies and other books, you see it overcomes them. And there's important lessons to get from those stories as well. So we, of course, don't want to be the characters in those stories being overcome. We want to overcome and master our fears and move forward.
That's amazing, and I was just going on a little journey with you while you were talking about it, because it is a form of release.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
like I'm doing, free writing with folks, and we're getting into some real stuff. And I could see how some of these folks could turn that into a really cool story
Yeah.
that they get to control, but it's still releasing that negative energy and all of the bad vibrations around that.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like we were saying earlier, it's almost anything that happens to you, no matter what it is. If you can turn it into a story, like a message comes out of you into the story that maybe someone else can then also experience some kind of like cathartic moment, going through it, you do turn it into something powerful. Yeah.
That's super, super amazing. And one of the things that I just recently discovered by doing the chapter that I've done
Mhm.
and contributed to the book that I'm in, um, I thought, oh my God, this is going to be huge. And how am I going to get this done in this time frame? And then when I did, once I got it written, I realized this is just a blip. There's so much more. It's just a sliver of time. And so those things that might seem huge at first are really small, and then some of those small things are actually really huge. It's just really neat when you get to see stuff in story form, because all of a sudden it doesn't look the same and you have an opportunity to make a new choice. So I really appreciate you bringing that forward, because that's really cool. That leads into my next question, particularly when it comes to adventures. When you were young, what did you want to grow up to be?
Oh my goodness. You know what? Very early on, I wanted to be a writer. So, I mean, I think maybe when I was very little, like still elementary school, I was like, well, I'll be an actress, or, I'll be something like that. I love that you used the word adventure, because I was always big on adventure, and I still am, like as an adult. Like I never grew out of it. Like I always wanted to be like, there's a path there. I want to go down the path and see what's there, and I want to climb the tree, and I want to, go up the mountain, whatever it might be. So I've always had a real adventurous side. So I think for a little while I thought like, oh, it'd be very cool to be like a National Geographic photographer, and like you get to go all over the world and see all this stuff. But really always at my heart, it was pretty much always writing. So I think especially once I got to middle school. So it's kind of cool. Like when I was growing up, kind of a cool story. Every summer, my family and my extended family, we would rent a beach house all together. And the house wasn't huge. It was like a 3-bedroom house with 12 of us there. So yeah, because it was me, my brother and sister, my parents, my aunt and uncle, and their 3 kids, and then my 2 grandparents. And, it was just one television. This was like in the 80s. It was like, what are they going to do with all these kids? So the solution was that they would kind of let us go out on the porch, get us out of their hair, and they would give us notebooks and pens, and we would just spend the afternoons writing. So we usually went to the beach in the morning and then afternoons writing. So sometimes fiction stories, sometimes little skits and plays, which we would then later perform for the family. So, and I was one of the younger ones. So I think part of it too was that the other kids were older, and like you want to be as cool as like the older kids. So like I really tried to keep up. Like I can remember before I could even write, like before I could even make letters, like making just squiggles and symbols that I came up with and being like, it's a story, and reading it and saying, this is what it says. So yeah, it started very young, I think, at that beach house. And then as I got older, I just kind of never grew out of it. Like I just always still loved the writing part. So fell in love with that, developed that dream of like, maybe I'll be a writer someday, and I'll just be at the beach and writing, or, whatever it'll be. And it just always stayed with me. It never changed. So by the time I got to high school, my freshman year of high school was actually the first time I attempted to write a novel. I did write a novel technically, but I'm sure it was terrible. I think I have some printed copy of it somewhere, and it was massive. It was like 300 pages, single spaced. So really like 600 pages are like huge. And, yeah. And just writing all the time, writing every day, like, and, going from there over these many years, just always trying new projects and trying to learn and get better and keep growing with it.
That's fantastic. Yes. I had the idea that I wanted to grow up and the first one was I wanted to grow up and be a welder. I'm not entirely sure where that came from. I think it was because my favorite uncle was a welder. Oh. I just thought that was pretty cool. Mm-hmm. The second thing I wanted to be was a jet pilot in the military. Nice. But of course, the health issues didn't permit that. But I have always been a creative writer. Mm-hmm. It was always my strength in school, even when I was faltering in other areas. Creative writing and art, which of course is what I ended up doing the most of and the most with, was creative writing. And you made me think, you were talking about the beach house and family. And so when my children were young, we'd go camping. Mm-hmm. And they were like, Mom, tell us a story, a campfire story. We used to watch Goosebumps and things, and Nickelodeon. So they were, oh, come on, mom, you can do this, because I love to tell stories impromptu. And so I was telling a fish story at night around the campfire. And to the degree that my daughter is still afraid of fish, I never thought it would develop into a fear of fish. But even my adult son told me, he goes, you did something with your story.
Yeah.
Because now I don't like to go into water where I can't see.
Yeah.
What's
we write that one down, turn that one into a screenplay. I don't know, like something good and scary.
Yeah. What I was just, and it was, I was just going with it. I heard the water rippling. And so it was, just this big, the hook on the car kind of story.
Classic stories.
Yeah. And you made me think of that. So thank you for bringing that back in into my life there. So with that, what was it that got you on the path that you're on now?
So I think probably in grad school. So in grad school, I actually went to grad school for a publishing and writing degree. And I had thought about screenwriting prior. So really most of my work has been in screenwriting. The book that just came out is the first book, I've ever published. Well, that's not entirely true, because my sister and I did one in 2009, but it was an anthology. So it was a collection of a lot of other writers we contributed to, but this is the first novel I've ever published. I really kind of went in with that as my focus. While I was there, I took a screenwriting course and really just loved it. And I had thought about it a little bit before, like in college, I had tried to write a screenplay, but I didn't really have, background on it yet. So, and we did make like a film my senior year of college. So that was fun. But yeah, then once I was in grad school, I kind of took that class. I started to really know more what you're supposed to do, because there's a lot of rules with screenwriting. Like with novel writing, other kinds of writing, you might be a little freer to kind of do it the way you want, but screenwriting has some particular rules. I did actually wind up eventually selling the screenplay that I wrote in that class. Which was amazing. So not to say that everything happened overnight, because it definitely didn't. So it's, it's a lot of years of, I guess, doing assignments here and there, working on different things. So, I did work in publishing for like a couple of years. It really wasn't a good fit. Like I wasn't like a good office kind of fit. I think because I am just more creative minded and the nurturing side. So I also love to teach. So I just never stopped kind of putting myself out there, always writing different stories. Like I got a lot of different script writing jobs. I think after I was in the publishing job about 3 years, I left really just to focus on writing full time. So to really put myself like more fully into screenwriting. I also teach screenwriting at 2 universities. And I also offer my own online courses. And I work specifically with authors who adapt books into screenplays, because that's kind of its own thing apart from just general screenwriting. So it's really built like over the years. And, you've probably heard that Steve Jobs quote about like, you can only connect the dots looking back. And I really feel that way sometimes, because definitely like, especially in my 20s, like just not knowing like, where's this going? And I like this, and like, I'll try to do that and I'll try to do. But I think that if you do just keep following your passion and doing the things you really like, they do wind up connecting in a really interesting way down the line. So kind of both these things of like the books and the screenplays have now come together in a really interesting way. And everything sort of revolves around those 2 worlds and creative expression. And yeah, it's really great.
That is amazing. Yeah. Do you find that writing is a really good release for you, and that it helps you not experience as much stress, or would you say that it brings more?
I think it actually helps take stress away. I think what happens is sometimes I get so busy that the making time for it can feel stressful, like how to fit it in. And then sometimes I don't, because I'm like, oh, I can't fit it in today, or I can't do this. But if I fit it in, invariably, it always feels good. Like I always come out of it feeling so much better. And like I've made sense of the world and, and more fulfilled. So, and I got to keep reminding myself that, like on days when I'm really busy and I'm like, oh, I can't write. It's like, no, you can just, even if it's just a few minutes. And I've been letting people know, like with this novel, when I first started it, I think ideally I was like, I'd like to have at least an hour a day, and like kind of thought I need at least an hour a day to work on it. And I know you sometimes hear these famous writers who write for 8 hours a day or whatever it is, but honestly, you know, life gets very busy. It gets busy with my son and with other work. A lot of this I think was completed literally on like 20 minutes a day. You know, over the course of like however many months, but I had my outline. So every time I sat down, I knew exactly what part was coming next. So what part to do. And even if I could just give it 20 minutes, it was still 20 minutes. It was still, and I'm a very fast writer, which I guess helps, but it was still like page or two, you know, like keep you going. So really, I guess from that, I kind of learned, even if it is, you just have 20 minutes, even if you just have 10 minutes, like do a couple paragraphs, do whatever you can do. It'll feel good and you keep moving forward, even if it's baby steps.
I like that. I just recently started learning how to block out time, and then I realized how much time I actually had versus what I thought I had.
Yes.
And a lot of things don't need to be tackled all at once. And being able to break it down into smaller parts, like you were just saying, when you have 20 free minutes, write a paragraph.
Yeah.
You know, and depending on your speed and your where you're at in your thought process, it can be a lot more or a little less. But you know, it really is about time management and being able to work that in the best way possible. But I really think that writing is such a freeing exercise. I think the freeness that it gives you once you've written something down and you can see it in front of you, it just that's why I asked about whether or not it was something that you found relief from, you know, in terms of stress, because I know that for me, I love to write. So I write about my experiences with animals, which that's my funny book that will be coming out.
Nice.
And then I have my, you know, my creative books that are just based off of real life things, but are more, you know, just creative, just going with the flow is. And I it sounds like we both like to help people get into that space and do that for themselves. And I think more people have the ability than they realize. To share their story.
Yes. Yeah, I think people can definitely think, like, unless it's something very dramatic, they're like, it's not, my story's not important enough, it's not big enough, you know, like it's even like these small little things can really become interesting stories if it's just looking at one even particular small thing. When I first started this book, actually, it's ironic because I knew I wanted to do a book. I didn't know which one I wanted to do. And of the ideas I was kicking around in my head, this one I was actually worried, like, there's actually not enough in this. I don't know if I can make it a whole book. And then I just got started. And then the more it unfolded, it's amazing how much actually came out, and like that there's different layers of it and all this. But back like at the very beginning, before I even did an outline, I was like, oh, like, is this really enough for a whole story? Maybe I should do this other idea, because this other idea has way more, you know, plot things going on, you know, to fill it up. So yeah, I mean, I think looking even at just like small moments, small things can really snowball bigger than you think. Yeah.
Well, that leads me into the next question is, what is your unique superpower?
Oh, wow. Unique superpower. I think it is looking at, I mean, as a writer, I think I am good at really capturing a lot of details of life and including them, and especially a lot of details like in this one, for example, of dynamics that can exist between people, and how, in this case, the main character, how they're really feeling, like a unique kind of point of view, but at the same time, one that I think most people have experienced at some time, even if they've never seen it like written out. But yeah, definitely capturing those details, I think. And I think using these scary stories. I think like for me as a writer, I kind of realized early on in my life, in addition to just realizing I wanted to be a writer, I realized I had a talent for kind of scary writing and suspenseful writing. Like it's a very particular thing. So, not, and every type of writing, like, so people can realize that they gravitate towards one kind or another, or maybe you're really, really good at writing romance, maybe you're really, really good at writing, whatever the case may be. But for me, it was really the suspense building and all that came to me. So I think that maybe that's one of those superpowers. And then I guess I would say just like I mentioned before, I think in terms of working with other people, working with students, I think the ability just to believe in their dreams and try to get them to where they want to go and not question, because I think, unfortunately, I think this happens a lot with different teachers, not question or put down or put a damper on it, but really try to cheerlead it and keep it going.
Yeah. And build their creative fire.
Yeah.
So stoke the fire. Do you see is, because you're making me think a lot about Stephen King. I know what you do. And
Yeah.
I love the way that people embrace, the thriller and horror genre. And would you include suspense in that? And where do you feel like Stephen King fits in relationship to like what you do?
I love Stephen King, number one. So I would love to get him a copy of this book. If anyone who hears this knows how, let me know. He's like one of my writing heroes. And in terms of talking about like taking, like, I think what he does is really great is he takes these scary stories or even supernatural stories and he grounds them in real life. So like he does such a good job at like painting a picture of real life, real people, but then these like extreme things that happen or like, or these supernatural things, different things that happen. So yeah, I really love him as an author. And, I get so much out of, of reading his work. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite book?
Oh, wow. Probably The Shining from Stephen King. I do love The Shining. I've read a lot of his stuff, but I like The Shining a lot. So going back to classic, I love reading his short stories too. So I'm a big fan of short stories.
Isn't it Nightmares and Dreamscapes?
Yes, I think that is. I'm not sure if I've read that one. I recently read Bazaar of Bad Dreams and I think The Night Shift, and I'm trying Before Sunrise, not Before Sunrise. There's something with sunrise in the title, but all these short story, Everything's Eventual is another one. There's all these short story collections, and I love those. I find that they're like so inspirational, and I've heard him say this about other writers, like when he finds a horror writer that he loves, just the value of reading their stuff and getting inspiration and then getting new ideas. And I love reading his short stories because again, also sometimes when you're busy, being able to read one and then, if you have to put it aside for a couple days or whatever, that's fine, but you can read one, get inspired by it, get your own ideas, keep writing. So I really love reading the short story collections.
Yes, I love the short stories in the Nightmares and Dreamscapes book. It's so much so my daughter read it and we ended up having to get two books because we both wanted to keep reading stories. And I love the power of the short story. Mm-hmm. There's a lot to what can be said in such a short period of, not only writing, but the way that can play out, in a movie scene or something. And yeah, my mother was a Stephen King fan. So I grew up going to the movie theater to see every Stephen King movie that came out because she was dragging me along. But I loved it. It really made me appreciate how you could illustrate, reality and creativity all together, and just the combination is so fantastic. Mm-hmm. So would you mind, we're coming up toward the end of our time together. Mm-hmm. And would you mind sharing with the audience that's listening, what exactly is it that you do and how they can get in contact with you?
Sure. Well, in addition to writing and being like screenwriter for hire and all that good stuff. I am also a screenwriting coach. So there's a course I created last year called the Book to Script course. So again, looking more specifically at authors adapting books to scripts, although there's a ton of info in that course, even if you just want to do a screenplay and think about, okay, how to adapt the story in your head to a screenplay, it'll work for that too. But it gives, I really wanted to create it because I didn't see too much that existed to really help people with adaptations specifically. So there's a lot that existed on screenwriting. I love authors, I love books. So I really wanted to create it so that there was something that went more in depth on how to do an adaptation. So that's the Book to Script course. You can find it at booktoscriptcourse.com. So there's that. There's one-on-one coaching that I do. So you should be able to find info for that on there as well. Couple other courses that I offer. So my website is just saramcdermottjain.com. So Sarah without an H. Jain is actually spelled Jain. And then another place where I would love to connect. So I am on social media. So you can find me on Instagram. There's a Facebook page, all that. But another place I'd really love to connect is YouTube. So this next year, for the first time, am going to be producing a feature film. So I have sold screenplays in the past. I've had other people, use my script to create a film. But this is going to be my first time doing a feature length one myself. So I've done shorts, doing a feature length one, and I'm going to be documenting the whole process week by week on YouTube. Like, here's what I had to do this week. Here's what I had to do that week towards getting this feature film, hopefully by the end of the year, filmed and done. So if you want to search for me on YouTube, the channel name is One Scary Woman. If you have trouble finding it, you can always, shoot me an email. I'm just Sara, SARA at booktoscriptcourse.com. But I would love to have more people get on there and comment and share, the projects that you're trying to work on. In addition to looking at the film, that channel also has a lot of, linking horror with personal growth messages and stuff like that. So there's a range of videos, but yeah, I would love to connect there.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love that. And so I have one last question that I like to ask my guests. And that is, what is one thing you would tell your 18-year-old self?
Wow. I think I would say really just to go all out towards the things that you most want. Cause I think I definitely, 20s especially, like went through a period of time where I felt like, and it was just a pressure I put on myself, like felt like I have to have, a traditional kind of success, which was with like that publishing job. Like I have to kind of fit myself into this other mold to be traditionally successful. And as I've gotten older, and like most of my success and like my professional life has really been these past couple years where it's really just been doubling down on the writing and the stuff that I love to do. And I've really come to believe that, if you don't love something, it's very hard to do it well. If you love something, and can do it passionately and are creative, constantly thinking of ways to get it out to the world and all this, just that life can be so fulfilling and that you can make a living doing the things that you love. So there's always a path to be able to do that. So I think I would probably tell her, like, don't feel like you have to make yourself fit like the mold that people in general seem to expect. Really just dial in on, this is the stuff that would make you happiest, that you most want to do, and just do that with all your heart and you'll be fine.
That's fantastic. Do you see yourself writing any short stories anytime in the
yes, I have written a ton of short stories. So I haven't sent them anywhere. My thought has been that sometime in the near future, I'm probably going to put them all into a collection. So I already know I have 2 different collections, divided up kind of by theme, and I already know like the titles. So it's just, or what the titles will be. So it'll just be a matter, I think, of going back and proofreading and putting them all together. But yeah, I have a lot of short stories, and especially again, those days where it's like it's busy or between bigger projects. I love the short story because you can do it, you can work on it for a day, couple days, however long, depending on how long it is, and not, it's not the same kind of, okay, I got to make sure for the next 6 months I'm doing this, but I can do them, quickly. So I love that too.
Fantastic. Well, Sara, we have come to the end of our time here together today. And I just really want to thank you because you reignited my storytelling again. And I'm looking forward to telling more and sharing all of the ones that are on the shelf, the ones that are waiting to be shared, that are fun, that are heartbreaking, that are just intriguing, or whatever they are. You're inspiring me to keep going with that, because there's been so much focus on the real stuff, and there's a lot of, I think it's good to escape sometimes into those other worlds, as we call them. And I'm a big Edgar Allan Poe fan. So
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. But again, thank you so very much for being here with me and with the audience today. I really appreciate you and all that you do. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate you. I appreciate you doing this podcast, getting these messages out. And just thank you. I'm honored that you had me on. So thank you so much.
Have a beautiful rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transformational Art with Katana. If you enjoyed the show, please click the like button and share the link to this podcast with your family and friends. To connect with me personally, please send an email to transformationalartwithkatana@gmail.com. Have a beautiful day.